The movie begins with Jack burying a body on the hill near the village. He then continues on his way until he reaches Ducky and Travis's farm and calls out to them. They recognize him, and here we learn that Jack is Jack Summersby, who was arrested 6 years ago. Since that day, he has not returned to his home or his village. The villagers welcome him warmly, and one of the children runs to tell his wife, Laurel, that her husband has come back. She is shocked, rushes home, takes her son Robert, and goes inside. Then Jack arrives with the villagers at his house, where Laurel has changed into a dress and dressed up her son in a suit. They greet Jack and welcome him home. That night, the villagers hold a celebration for Jack's return. During the party, he tells them about his imprisonment in Elmira prison, where he was tortured. One of the guards even stepped on his hand, injuring it so badly that he has been unable to hold anything with it ever since. Later, Joseph, an African-American man, arrives with his group of servants to greet Jack. Joseph recognizes him and reminds him that Jack's father once bought him for $100. Jack welcomes them warmly and invites them to join the celebration, but Joseph refuses, knowing that the other villagers still consider him and his people as slaves, unworthy of celebrating or being treated as equals. Joseph and his group then leave. The villagers advise Jack not to talk to the slaves. One of them asks why he has changed so much and reminds him that he used to hate the slaves. Jack replies that when the soldiers arrested him, they struck his head, and since then he has forgotten many things. Then Jack dances with his wife, while Orrin looks on, clearly upset. He loves Laurel, and they had agreed to marry before Jack's return. When Jack asks Orrin why he is standing alone instead of dancing, Orrin shows him his wooden leg, which he got after being injured by Union soldiers. After the party ends, Jack returns home with Laurel and asks her about the pictures that used to hang on the wall. She tells him that the Union soldiers stole the silverware, ivory picture frames, and anything of value from all the village homes, but she managed to hide a precious brooch she inherited from her grandmother. When they go upstairs, she reminds him that before his arrest, he used to sleep alone, so he goes to sleep in the other room. Laurel hides the brooch in a drawer, but then she is startled to find Jack standing there. When she asks why, he tells her he wants her to shave his beard. She takes him to the kitchen and shaves him with a razor. Jack then asks if she still loves him. She replies that his cruelty had made her forget her love for him. The next day, Jack takes the horse and leaves, while Laurel goes out to work in the field. Orrin arrives and tells her she beat him to the farm that morning. He asks about Jack, and she says he went to check on the farm. Orrin wishes he wouldn't come back and tells her she wasn't wrong to fall for another man after her husband had been gone for 6 years. Laurel replies that she hasn't married Orrin yet and that Jack's return has changed everything. Orrin warns her that if Jack hits her again, he won't stand by quietly, then leaves. Meanwhile, Jack checks the chicken coop and finds it destroyed, which angers him. He then inspects the farmland, and Orrin tells him that the soil is no good for cotton. Jack insists that if he and 40 freedmen worked the land, they could make it fertile again and plant crops. Orrin is offended and asks, "Are you comparing me to slaves?" Jack apologizes and says he appreciates all Orrin has done in his absence. Orrin replies that he did it for Laurel. Jack answers that Laurel chose him long ago. When Jack tells Laurel about the conversation, she admits that she promised Orrin if her husband didn't return by next year, she would marry him. Jack asks if she was intimate with Orrin. She says she never allowed him to touch her and asks Jack to treat him kindly because he helped her greatly while he was gone. That evening, Laurel sees Jack wearing the shirt she made him on their wedding day. She invites him to sleep in her room, and they become intimate. The next morning, Jack takes his son to the market and lets him drive the wagon. When they arrive, Jack visits Ducky's shop and asks him to make new shoes. Ducky is surprised that Jack's feet seem smaller and asks how that happened. Jack says that's always been his size. That evening, Jack gathers the villagers and tells them the future of the village lies in planting tobacco. He says whoever joins him will sign a contract granting them a piece of his land to cultivate. He'll provide fertilizer and tools, and at harvest time, they'll split the yield equally, half for them and half for him to pay off the mortgage on his farm and house. Once the mortgage is paid, each farmer can buy their plot of land at a fair price. Joseph asks if he and his people will also own the land they cultivate, and Jack says yes. Orrin and the other villagers object. One woman says she won't agree to former slaves owning land like her, so she won't participate. Jack insists there's no difference between them and Joseph's people. Orrin argues that tobacco seeds are too expensive, that Jack is nearly bankrupt, and his land and home are already mortgaged. He asks where Jack will get the money for his plan. Jack replies that everyone has something of value, if they all contribute, they can buy the seeds. Laurel says there's no other way and offers her valuable brooch as her share. Jack then tells them that whoever agrees should come tomorrow with what they'll contribute and sign the contract. The next day, all the villagers hand over what they own to Jack for the project. Joseph contributes an ivory horn of great value. When Jack asks where he got it, Joseph says it belonged to his mother. He then takes the contract and asks, "Does it say here that I'll own the land I plant?" Jack confirms it does. Joseph asks if he'll come back, and Jack assures him he will. Jack gathers all the items from the villagers, goes to the city, sells them, and buys the tobacco seeds. Meanwhile, the villagers begin dividing the land and working on Jack's farm. When Jack is late returning, they grow worried and ask Laurel when he'll be back. Eventually, Jack returns, and when Laurel asks why he was delayed, he says he had to go to Virginia to buy the seeds and shows her what he bought. The next day, the villagers plant the tobacco seeds. That night, Jack reads his son a story about the Greek gods, and Laurel seems truly happy to see how lovingly Jack treats their child. The next day, Laurel tells him that he had never read Greek mythology to their son before. He explains that when he was imprisoned, he shared a cell with a teacher who used to read them stories about the ancient Greek gods every day. When that teacher died, Jack took his place and began reading those stories from the teacher's books to the other prisoners. As time passes, the crops begin to grow. During this period, Laurel suddenly faints, and Jack carries her to their room. When the doctor examines her, he tells Jack that Laurel is pregnant, news that fills Jack with joy. Later, Jack discovers that a poisonous worm has infested the crops. He asks Joseph if he knows how to get rid of it, and Joseph tells him that Orrin might know. Shortly afterward, Hamilton Sawyer arrives with 2 other men and asks Jack if he can work on the farm. Jack replies that there are already enough workers. Hamilton, who once served as a soldier alongside the real Jack Summersby, then says that he knows this is Jack Summersby's land and asks, "Where's Jack?" At that moment, Laurel witnesses the scene from afar and sees Jack attacking Hamilton and his companions, driving them off the property. When she later asks Jack who they were, he becomes angry and leaves without answering. Meanwhile, Orrin meets with Hamilton and the others, then returns to the farm and applies a chemical treatment to the soil. He tells Jack that it will kill the worms and that Ham Sawyer gave him the formula. Jack replies that he'll thank Ham Sawyer when he sees him. Afterward, Orrin goes to speak with Laurel, telling her that he has worked with her for 6 years on the farm, yet she abandoned him the moment a man claiming to be her husband returned. He reveals that a man named Hamilton came to her land that morning looking for work, but her husband attacked him and drove him away because he recognized the real Jack Summersby, and exposed the man living with her as an imposter. Orrin continues, saying that Hamilton had fought beside the real Jack during the war when Jack was wounded in his youth, a wound that left a scar on his body, a scar Laurel knows well. The man living with her now doesn't have that mark, nor does he know Ham Sawyer, Jack's friend who died in the war, proof that he is not Jack Summersby. He adds that this stranger may have fooled everyone else, but not her. She knew from the very first day that he wasn't her husband. Then, in anger, he demands, "Why did you live in sin with a stranger and even bear his child? You chose him over me, even though I would have made you an honest woman and raised your boy as my own." Laurel furiously orders him off her land. That night, Jack asks her, "Do you love me or not?" She draws her husband's gun and points it at him, shouting, "You're not my husband, get out of here." Jack steps closer and tells her he's not afraid of her, insisting that he loves her, that he is Jack, and that he will never leave their home. Soon after, a group of masked men attacks the farm. One of them tells Jack that they are the Knights of the White Camellia, and they throw Joseph to the ground, badly beaten. Jack demands, "Why did you do this?" One of them replies that it's Jack's fault. His slave, Joseph, paid the price, because no black man is allowed to own land or a house. Jack protests, saying that the law gives him that right since he bought his land fairly. One of the masked men asks, "Aren't you the schoolteacher from Clark County?" Jack answers, "I've never set foot in Clark County." Then one of them raises his gun to kill Joseph, but Jack steps in front of him to protect Joseph and orders them to leave his land immediately. Another points his gun at Jack, but Laurel comes out of the house and shouts, "Get off our land." At that moment, Jack sees the man with the wooden leg, Orrin. One of the riders aims his weapon at Orrin, but another stops him, saying, "We don't kill white men." The mob then leaves the farm on horseback. Joseph's men help him up, and Joseph asks Jack, "Is the land still mine?" Jack answers, "The land you paid for is yours. No one can take it from you." Later, Laurel goes upstairs and overhears Jack comforting their son, Robert, telling him not to be afraid as long as he's there. He resumes reading the story to him, and Laurel, seeing this, feels safe again and abandons her plan to drive him away. The next day, while Jack is repairing the barn, Orrin approaches carrying a torch and says, "If you don't admit who you really are, I'll burn this barn down." Jack replies, "I'm the man Laurel chose." Orrin attacks him and throws the torch into the barn. Jack rushes to extinguish it, and the two men fight violently until Robert runs in and tells Jack that his mother is in labor. Jack immediately leaves to go to her, checks on her safety, and sees their newborn daughter. He tells Laurel, "We'll name her Rachel, after your mother." A few days later, Jack and the villagers gather their tobacco harvest. Then two federal officers arrive and arrest Jack for the murder of Charles Conklin. When Laurel asks if he did it, Jack denies it. The officers take him to court. Laurel, along with her children and their servant Esther, follows, joined by the villagers who come to support him. To everyone's surprise, the presiding judge is a black man. The first witness testifies that Jack was gambling with them, and when Charles discovered he was cheating, a fight broke out. Jack drew his gun, shot Charles, and fled. The judge adjourns and schedules the next hearing for the following day. That night, Orrin visits Laurel and tells her he can get Jack released, if she agrees to leave Jack afterward and marry him. Desperate, she goes to Jack and pleads with him to reveal his true identity to save himself, but he refuses. She then turns to Orrin and accepts his deal. The next day in court, Laurel testifies that the man before them is not her husband, Jack Summersby, and that she does not know who he really is. When the judge asks why she didn't speak up sooner, she explains that everyone in the village had longed for Jack's return, and when he came back and helped them, she felt that telling the truth would destroy the hope he had restored to them. She insists she is certain he is not her husband. Jack then asks the judge to let him speak to her directly. When granted permission, he tells her that if the court believes her, all the contracts he made with the villagers will be void, none of them will own the land they worked and cultivated. He also says that if she's right, their daughter would be branded a child born out of wedlock and would carry that shame forever. The only person who benefits from her testimony, he says, is Orrin, and he asks whether she and Orrin agreed on this together. She hesitates. Angry, he demands, "What makes you so sure I'm not your husband?" She replies, "Because I never loved my husband the way I love you." He asks again, "In your heart, do you feel that I'm your husband or not?" She answers softly, "Yes, you are my husband." When the judge warns Jack that confirming her statement means he'll be sentenced to death, Jack replies that denying it would mean living as a dead man and harming many others. He then firmly declares before the court that he is Jack Summersby. Later, scenes show the village tobacco market. Jack's and the villagers' tobacco sells for a great sum. On the day of the execution, Laurel visits Jack in his cell and tells him that the tobacco sold for $10,000. Jack smiles and says she'll be able to pay off the mortgage and still have enough left to live comfortably with their children. When she asks him one final time, "Tell me, who are you really?" he answers that he is a schoolteacher named Horace. He explains that the real Jack Summersby had been in prison with him, and after Jack was released, he, Horace, assumed his identity, went to the village of Harold, and worked as a teacher. He gathered money from the townsfolk to build a school, but instead, he stole it and fled. He tells her that Jack was actually his twin brother, separated from him in childhood. They were reunited by chance in prison, where Jack told him all about her, the village, and everything he knew. After Jack's release, Horace met him again, but one of the men Jack had swindled recognized him and tried to kill him. Horace defended him, killed the attacker, and fled. He buried Jack on the hill near the village and decided to return there, pretending to be Jack Summersby, to make amends for what his brother had done. Laurel begs him to tell the governor the truth, but he refuses, not for his own sake, but for hers and for the villagers. Jack, or Horace, is executed in front of Laurel and all the villagers. In the end, the poor and the African Americans are able to own their land thanks to him, and Laurel lives the rest of her life cherishing the memory of Horace. If you liked the movie, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video so you don't miss any new uploads.